welcome along to Used Car Heaven, the program that helps you, the viewer, get behind the wheel of your next car. This week, we're looking at cars that you can buy for under £1,000, but which one will our viewer choose? While Ian Royal will be offering an alternative set of wheels to my three, and our car doctor Simon Hughes is back to diagnose more of your car's mechanical problems.
My name's Andy Mayle. I've just got back from America and I need a reliable car for under £1,000.
If only everything in life was as reliable as this car maker once claimed, and with this car, you'd have to say they were right. These cars are not usually the choice of boy or girl racers, but are generally bought by people who drive carefully and service them regularly. As there are plenty around, there are lots to choose from and prices remain low. So let's find out what Andy thinks of the Volkswagen Polo. So what do you think of it? The Polo?
The Polo? Nice little car. Overall, yeah, it's a great little runaround, yeah.
When you buy a car, right, you're going to have to eventually bring this back to your mates and your friends and everything. How do you think they're going to react to it? Are they going to laugh you off the planet? Or?
Well, like I say, not everyone's got a coupe.
Yeah, okay.
It's a German coupe.
Oh, okay. Should go into sales.
Yeah, but you know, it's
got a sunroof.
It's got a sunroof. Drop the top down. You wouldn't show off in it, but it's at the end of the day, it's a runaround, isn't it? And
who are you trying to convince, me or you?
Both. Yeah, I'm not sold on it.
Yeah, but you get what you pay for if you're spending that sort of money. Oh, he stalls it, yes. So what do you think of the gears in it?
Oh, I think it's great.
Don't go so red.
I did that on TV as well.
Absolutely, that was great, well done. Launched back in 1974 and originally called the Audi 50, the car was later adopted by the Volkswagen arm and badged the Polo. Our car is a facelifted Polo Mark II, launched in late 1990. Basically the same shape as the original Mark II, but smoother around the edges to make it that little bit more aerodynamic. It was the world's first small car to feature catalytic converters and fuel injection on all engines. So why would you buy a Polo? Today, Volkswagens have an excellent build quality, and this was even more the case back in the late 80s, early 90s, when their build quality was so good that they were over-engineered. Now this particular car here today has a 1-litre engine. It's cheap to own and cheap to run, and if it was well looked after, it should be very reliable. It'll return around 50 miles to the gallon, which I have to say is very impressive. And when you go to insure it, you'll discover that it's only an insurance group 2. Mark II Polo prices range from low to really low. At the bottom end, you should be able to find a 3-door 1-litre Polo Fox for under £200. But pay more and you should be able to find cars in good condition with plenty of service history for well under £1,000. So within this budget, Andy should have plenty of choice. But let's find out what he thinks of the Volkswagen Polo. So what do you think of the Polo then, Andy?
Overall, not that happy. It's too small for me, personally. I'm quite a tall chap. It's not nice to drive. It's too light on the steering, and you know, it's just not the car I'm after. It's
4 gears as well.
4 gears, and you know, the aerial's missing. There's little bits and bobs that need doing to it, and you know, there's only 4 gears. I like my 5 gears.
I don't blame you on that one.
Yeah. It's just not the car I'm after. The image, I'm going to get laughed at
by your friends.
Yeah.
It's all about image, this really, isn't it?
Especially I couldn't take the girls up.
Especially when you've got an aerial.
I know, yeah.
Screw. That doesn't really go down well, does it? All right then, well don't worry, because you've got 2 more cars for you to have a look at.
Great.
Let's have a look and see the second car. Despite building one of the all-time greatest sports cars, the manufacturer of this model failed to produce a car that could challenge the all-conquering BMW 3 Series. But as a car worth less than £1,000, we think it offers a lot. But what will Andy think of Mazda Xedos 6? So what do you think of the Mazda Xedos then?
First impressions, yeah.
You stalled it 3 times already.
Yeah, thanks for
I thought I'd get that in. Well,
you have to get them out of your system, don't you?
Absolutely.
Better to do it there in the car park than in the road, as we found out, or on a roundabout.
A roundabout.
It doesn't tend to go down well with van drivers, does it?
So you stalled the Polo on the roundabout. You stalled this 3 times before you started driving it. What do you think of it?
Well, I mean, it's great to stall. You know. Very enjoyable. That's why I did it 3 times.
But on the road, it's quite nice.
On the road, it's great. Yeah, it's well, I'm in 3rd now, and I'm just cruising. and it's, you know, not a lot of gear changes. Like as the other one, I was up and down all the time.
You had only 4 gears in the Polo,
Obviously,
which
yeah,
meant
so,
it would have been screaming
yeah.
on the motorway. But this, I have a funny feeling, if you got this on the motorway, you could cruise for
Yeah,
miles
and it's a lot quieter as well. The engine, you know, I'm not having to talk over the engine as I was with the Polo.
Launched in 1992, the Xedos 6 was Mazda's attempt to compete with the BMW 3 Series. Launched originally with a lovely 2-litre V6 engine, this was followed a year later by a less powerful but more economical 4-cylinder 1.6-litre unit. The car lived until 1999, when after 72,000 worldwide sales, and Mazda coming under the control of Ford, the American top management pulled the plug on the Xedos 6. Why would you want to buy a Xedos 6? Well, this car is a prime example of how you can benefit from a car's lack of image. You will pay more for a BMW 3 Series of the same age and that's had a harder life. Now the engine in this is a 1.6 litre. It's not that powerful, but it's economical and reliable. You're not going to see many of these cars on the road, which means for your £1,000 you're getting into something that's slightly different. So what should you be paying for your Xedos 6? Apart from the early 1.6s and some high mileage V6 models, Xedoses are still above our £1,000 target. Unglamorous as it sounds, we suggest that Andy sticks with the 1.6 engine car. They're cheaper to run and fix if something were to go wrong with that pretty solid motor. But let's find out what he thinks of our Mazda Xedos 6. So the Mazda Xedos 6, what did you think of it?
Yeah, a lot better. A lot more room inside. The interior was great for the edge of the car. Good condition. The electrics sold it for me.
Buttons are all in the right places.
Yeah. Everything at the touch of a button.
All electric.
Yeah, and just a smooth ride. You know, I wasn't fighting with the car.
Oh.
It was the car was driving me where I wanted to go.
Yeah, and you're thinking long journeys, you could really put up with being in the car all the time.
Yeah, it'd be a nice smooth ride.
I must admit, the space compared to the Polo.
Yeah, you could really stretch out. You didn't feel boxed in. You know, a bit claustrophobic in the Polo.
Well, don't worry, we've got one more car for you to have a look at, but don't make up your mind just yet.
Okay.
But before that, we're going to join our car doctor, Mr. Simon Hughes, who's been looking at the problems that certain people have with their cars.
Today we're looking at fluid leaks on motor cars, and in particular water leaks and oil leaks. But we do get water leaking sometimes from the exhaust. But that's quite normal, because for every gallon of fuel we put in the car, you tend to get a lot of fluid coming out, especially on cold mornings. And if you do short runs, it'll tend to look like that because it gathers, doesn't get hot enough to burn it away. But now we're going under the bonnet because we've got some water and oil leaks to look at there as well. Now under the bonnet we've got two sources of leaks. We've got the engine that will leak oil, and it will also leak water. So the water, the most common areas are the radiator, and as you can see down here, this one's already corroding and is probably going to spring a leak on its next journey. Now also we get water leaking from the water pump, which is buried behind these covers here, and that's quite common on these cars to go. And either of those start leaking, you must get them checked immediately and replaced, and both jobs aren't really DIY jobs. Now looking at the oil, I've had a scout round this engine. We've actually got an oil leak at the top, an oil leak at the middle and at the bottom. But the most common oil leaks are the crankshaft oil seals and maybe the breather system, and which is what's happening here. Crankshaft oil seals, I tend to monitor that leak to see if it gets worse or it's really losing a lot of oil. If not, then leave it until the engine maybe had to come out for some other reason. These sort of things here, I'd want to clean that up and then monitor it after running it to see if it leaks out a lot. And that's either caused by the engine having done a lot of miles and maybe worn piston rings, or maybe a blocked breather or something like that. Now you do sometimes get some easy leaks, like you might just be fortunate enough to get maybe a water leak near your radiator, and it might just be a hose clip that needs tightening up with a screwdriver. Or you might even have something simple like an oil filter that's just ready for changing and has just sprung a leak. Well, that just generally depends how lucky you are with cars. In this case, this has actually got a sound bill of health and there's nothing majorly wrong with it other than maybe the radiator. So I'll be back next week to tell you more things about cars and how to keep them on the road.
Well, so far Andy's been out in the Volkswagen Polo and the Mazda Xedos 6, and I've got one more car for him to have a look at. And Ian Royal will be here to tempt him away from my three cars with his alternative. So make sure you join me after the break, and if you've taken a fancy to any one of these cars here this week, I'll be telling you what to look out for if you go out to buy one. We'll see you in a minute. Hi and welcome back to Used Car Heaven. Now Andy has under £1,000 to spend on a reliable car that's cheap to drive. He's already driven the VW Polo and Mazda Xedos 6. Let's find out what he thinks of our final car. It may be looking a bit dated now, but when you've got under £1,000 to spend, this car that once topped the sales charts makes a lot of sense. Its 1.6 litre engine may not have a lot of power, but it is economical. There are plenty around, so parts are plentiful, and down at the garage they're cheap to fix. But what will Andy think of the Vauxhall Astra? So come on, we're in the Vauxhall, what do you think of it?
Not impressed. There's the vibration to start with is, that's obvious. You're rattling as you go, and if you're on a long journey, that's going to really annoy you. Short distance is bad enough, but long distance is going to really irritate you. The clutch is very, very heavy. You have to, I can feel myself. As you get used to the car, you're going to get cramped doing this clutch.
Is it that bad?
Yeah.
But you have to push it really hard to get it down.
Yeah, you need 2 feet. It's easy to store, as we found out.
But you're the king of stallers today, really, aren't you?
The famous roundabout.
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times.
Oh, have a whip.
I'm sorry, he's only learning. So that's exactly the same place as you stole the Polo. I can't actually believe.
He's brilliant.
I can't believe you actually did it. All right, so we could blame that on the clutch.
We could do.
Yeah, but we won't.
Probably. I'll tell you what, I'll take the credit for that one.
The Astra was launched all the way back in 1979 as Vauxhall's replacement for the Chevette. Our car is one of the Mark III Astras, which was launched in 1991 as a competitor for the Volkswagen Golf and the Ford Escort. The Mark III was replaced in 1998. The Mark IV is due for replacement in the next few months, although perhaps not the most exciting car on the road. Where it matters, in the sales charts, the Astra is never far from the top. So why would you buy a Vauxhall Astra? Well, they're cheap and there's an awful lot of them around, which means that when you go looking for one, you can actually afford to be quite fussy. When you do find one, if it's been well serviced and well looked after, you shouldn't have a problem with reliability. Inside, it's well built and it's quite spacious. Under the hood, you've got a small engine, which means it's economical and it's quite cheap to insure. So what should you be paying for an Astra? Astra Mark III start at under £100, but these are likely to be tired examples. With £1,000 to spend, Andy has an awful lot of choice of Astras made before 1995. We'd be more concerned with overall condition and finding a car that has been serviced regularly over outright age. But what will he think of the Vauxhall Astra? All right, Andy, finally the Vauxhall Astra, which drives like a big snowball rolling down a hill.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
It should be yellow because this is a lemon, I'm afraid. There's no getting around it. It's to look at, the exterior is fine. For a car of its age, it's what you'd expect. But once you get inside, it's a whole other story. The interior isn't great. It's very standard.
Yeah.
But then when you start driving the car, it's for £600 I want something that goes, and this car just cuts out on me. It's unpredictable. It's scary to drive. Some of that was my fault. I admit that, but this car did not help.
A lot of it was your fault, but I have to admit that a lot of it was the car. It just cut out for no apparent reason when you were stopping and stuff. Which, if it was scary for you, it was 10 times a lot more scary for me. I can sitting there with a bus coming to. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But you've had problems with roundabouts and you had problems with this car, and for the money, it's not your cup of tea, man.
No, by far.
All right, well, don't make up your mind just yet. You've seen the 3 cars I've shown you.
Yep.
We've got one more, an alternative, and Ian Royal will show us which one it is.
Now, the great thing about second-hand cars is that sometimes, if you're just prepared to take a little bit of a risk, you can find some really interesting cars at just silly money.
Back in 1990, when it was new, this car cost over £20,000. 13 years later, even in good condition, this four-wheel drive Sierra Gear estate is worth such a tiny amount of money, it's practically a giveaway.
Before you reach for the remote control, no, wait, come back a minute. Let me just tell you about this car. 2.9 litre V6, 150 brake horsepower, four-wheel drive system, the same four-wheel drive system as used in the Sierra Cosworth. Remember that car? Fantastic, wasn't it? Now this was from an era when rep cars ruled our roads. It was a motorway muncher's wildest fantasy.
Okay, so the jelly mould looks haven't improved with age, but 13 years ago you were probably sick to death of seeing them everywhere, while now you can drive one with a feeling of nostalgia, as most of them have rotted away, making Sierras quite rare now.
Now this car tells me it's done 525 miles. I doubt it somehow. I suspect it's been round the clock at least once. For a car at the time when it was new, this was 20-odd thousand pounds, which was a huge amount of money for 1990, wasn't it? 20 grand for a Ford? You wouldn't really pay that now, would you? Well, the interior of the Sierra, as you would expect, is beginning to look a bit dated now because this is a car that's 13 years old. But at the time, this car was the bee's knees. It's the gear spec, so it's got everything on it, as you would expect for that sort of era, including air conditioning, which was quite rare in those days. And the trim's actually holding up remarkably well for a car of this age. There's bags of room in here, and there's plenty of space back there too. So you've got a four-wheel drive system, the same four-wheel drive system as used in the Sierra Cosworth. And if you're maybe out in some rural area or at risk of getting stuck in the winter because of the snow or something like that, this is the perfect car for you because it will get you through, to a certain extent anyway.
Let's be perfectly honest here. Cars of this age have a history, and sometimes it can be sinister. So don't only check for blue smoke from the exhaust pipe and a bit of rust, but also look for signs of clocking and bodged crash repairs. Be sure you check all documentation thoroughly.
Buying any car at this end of the market can be a gamble, but if you check it over thoroughly, if you do your homework, you can get a very good and, more importantly, very, very cheap car. You pay your money and you take a chance, but the question is our viewer this week willing to take that risk?
So what do you think of the Ford Sierra?
It was okay, you know, fairly good car. Not my cup of tea, really, I have to admit.
2.9 litre.
Yeah, that's true. It's got a big engine, you know, it's fairly rapid, but
cost you money.
it's gonna take a lot of fuel. But also, I mean, I see an estate. I think old man. You see it. I'd like something more like a coupe or something a bit smarter.
Oh, could you be going for the Polo then?
Still deliberating.
Say nothing yet, because you've seen all our three cars. You've also seen Ian Royal's alternative. But now, Andy, it's time for you to make your choice. Which one of our 3 or 4 cars will it be this week? All right, Andy, give me your 3, 2, 1, with your least favourite being 3 and of course your favourite being 1.
Oh, John, I think the Vauxhall Astra, number 3. Didn't grab me, I'm afraid. You know, if I'm spending £600 on a car, I want something I can rely on, something that isn't going to let me down. And
that did a number of times today.
It's just too dodgy for me, I'm afraid.
All right, in second place then?
Second place, Volkswagen Polo. You know, it's a great little motor. It'll last forever. Just too small for me, I'm afraid. Just couldn't fit in it.
Bigger.
I like my big, you know, my space.
All right, which means, voila, this
Number 1
was your favourite. Why?
Yeah, the Mazda. It's bigger, more spacious. It's got me gadgets as well, you know.
Ah, very important.
Plus 5 gears,
electric windows,
you know.
And 5 gears.
5 gears, which the Polo didn't have, and it's 20 quid cheaper than the Polo.
Oh, well, you can't go wrong with that.
I'm getting more for my money.
Fill the tank full of petrol as well.
There you go.
Would you like to take it for a drive?
Why not, eh?
Well, hop in the driver's seat there. Just try not to kill me. Not that I don't trust you or anything.
I'm a great driver. I stalled it 5 times.
Try not to stall it this time. Off you go. Here we go. Bye-bye. All right, Andy, so this is the winner, the Mazda. Why?
Yep. Basically, it's a lot more spacious than the other cars. It's easier to drive. It's more of a pleasure to drive.
Yeah.
And it's electric, you know, all the
Windows
controls.
and sunroof, yeah.
So I'm getting more for my money, really. I just feel a lot more comfortable in this car.
Well, if you've taken a fancy to any of the cars that you've seen today, well, if you're thinking of going out and purchasing one, here's what you should look out for. In general, the Astra is pretty reliable, although do be wary of 16-valve cars as they suffer terribly with sticking valves. Make sure you check the car's service history because if it's had a problem, it can result in a cylinder head stripped down and rebuilt. Also, look at the front wishbones, as these are known to deteriorate with age and will lead to an MOT failure. The good news is that they are cheap to repair. The brakes are the main area of concern on the Xedos 6, with the rear calipers failing. A good indication of impending failure is a dragging or sticking handbrake. If this is the case, you should start saving as replacements will cost around $150 per side. Like most VWs, the Polo is very reliable. The Achilles heel, however, is the single-point fuel injector that can fail. Specifically, if the starter motor develops a fault and has to be replaced. This will set you back around 120 quid. So in final place, it's this, the Vauxhall Astra. Why, I hear you say? Well, it's very simple, because every time you pulled up at traffic lights or behind a car, this cut out. When you're buying a car, that's something you don't want to have happen. But if you look around for one of these in the marketplace, there's a much better example. Next, it's the old Volkswagen Polo. Very simple reason why he didn't like this, and I agree with them. He's 6'3" and this car is just too small. He doesn't fit into it, it's as simple as that. So in first place comes the Mazda. It's a much bigger car, much more comfortable. It's got electric everything, sunroof and windows, and pretty much you could drive this on and on down the motorway. Myself personally, I probably would have gone for this, but it would have been a close call between this and the Polo. Well, that's just it for Used Car Heaven. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Make sure you join us next time, where we'll be helping yet another viewer find their next car. We'll see you then. Good luck.